really know where we're headed, we need to unveil revolutionary ideas from leaders that are shaping the defense and business industries. Join me on these Chats of the Future with Redstone Gateway. I'm James Lomax, and this is Uncommon Access. Today, we're talking with Vice President of Workforce at the Huntsville Madison County Chamber, Lyndsay Ferguson, about the future of work in our region and how the Chamber is supporting local businesses. Lyndsay Ferguson, thanks for coming on to Uncommon Access today.
Thanks for having me.
I know we're very excited to talk to you and all the really interesting things that are happening at the Chamber of Commerce and just in North Alabama in general. And you know, you have a very important role there now. You're Vice President of Workforce for the Chamber of Commerce. You know, so what does that entail day to day?
Absolutely. So my role really focuses on everything that has to do with talent and people who are working across our community. So I work with our companies, certainly, just like most of the work of the Chamber, but I'm also working with a lot of community partners. So when I think about talent and I think about workforce, I'm looking at that all the way from early childhood education to existing talent and training that's happening as well. So I work closely with our education partners, both our pre-K through 12 systems, as well as our post-secondary systems, work with a lot of our training providers as well, and then also just with others across the community and across the region in terms of looking at needs, trying to solve problems where there are needs, and then bringing together the right people to solve any workforce challenges and to train up and upskill talent where we need to.
So it sounds like there's multifacets to that. And, you know, this is a role that it's kind of new to you in that it's a new position right now, but it's a role you've really held before, both at the Chamber and then in the private sector experience. You know, can you walk the listeners through that and how you got to where you are now?
Sure. So yes, I am boomerang back to the Chamber. So I served as the workforce director there from 2015 to 2017. But in terms of my background and experience, it has pretty much always been focused on human resources and talent. So my background within the HR field has been in the financial industry, healthcare, education, and also within manufacturing. And so most recently, I was working here in the manufacturing sector. So I was at Mazda Toyota Manufacturing and part of the startup work happening there. And so I now think I come back to this role with some perspective also of what our local companies are experiencing, and being able to be a collaborator and someone who can help to identify how to solve some of the challenges we see within workforce, but also someone who can celebrate the successes that we're having across the region as well.
Yeah, so I mean, you mentioned getting to see that firsthand and working within the industry itself. What are some of those challenges that are out there right now? Because we hear a lot about it. A lot of people don't even really know what workforce development is and what workforce challenges are. So if you could just kind of go over what you see as those challenges right now. Yeah,
so I think right now you do hear a lot more about workforce in everyday conversation. So maybe, like you've said, for some people who this isn't a topic that they're thinking about or focusing on regularly, like someone like me that spent a lot of time in there. When we think about workforce, we really are thinking about making sure that we have sufficient people to fill jobs across all industries. And so right now we are seeing across the country some pretty significant discussions about workforce and some challenges too. And so right now, part of the conversation in that area is also around why are we seeing some of the shortages that we are? So our region is benefiting. We have low unemployment, essentially full employment at this point in time. But we also have people who are not participating in the workforce. And so there's a couple pieces to understand from that. One is, are there barriers to people who want to be working who can't for certain reasons? And then are there others who are choosing not to work? And what are the reasons that maybe they're making those choices? Is it because of, work-life balance, or is it because of a corporate culture they've experienced, or is it because they haven't found the job that they think is the right fit for them? And so I think one of the struggles within any discussion around workforce is you're really talking about people. So there's not just a one-stop shop solution for solving those. So there may be a solution that addresses a portion of a challenge, but you're still going to have other pieces because you're dealing with human behavior and individual choices within there too.
So would you say, on kind of a day-to-day basis, are you more dealing with the business owners, the CEOs that are trying to also address these challenges in their own organization? Or are you working with the individuals that are out maybe as people in the workforce, people that are looking to get these positions or are trying to make it more feasible for their families? What's the day-to-day kind of like?
So most of my work is focused more on both our companies. So working with whether those are, leaders within those organizations, within their HR teams and functions. So understanding where they're having challenges, where they are looking for someone to kind of brainstorm and almost, look for opportunities to solve that. And then another piece of it is really working with the community partners and kind of training partners that maybe we have. So we have a regional workforce council that actually looks across our entire North Alabama region and a 13-county footprint. We have other chamber partners and economic development partners. We have our 2-year systems and our college partners. So I'm also spending time with them to understand what they're doing right now, providing feedback where we get it also from companies. So it's important for a training provider to know, well, when I train someone up or I teach them or I take them through, whether it's a certification course or it's, a full 2-year degree or it's a 4-year degree, and then I send them into the workforce, are they showing up with the skills that that employer wants? And so I tend to also be able to be a bridge between our training and education partners and our companies to share some of that feedback where they're having it and to be able to say, well, they're still looking for people with this skill or they're struggling to hire people that have that. I do work some with individuals who are, looking for jobs, but I tend to direct them instead to the right resources. So they may come to me with a question or just because of, hearing about my role at the chamber. But usually I'm not the individual person that is serving,
kind of utilize those partners that you mentioned.
Exactly.
So I think a lot of the listeners probably know you from when you were CEO of the leadership here in Huntsville, Madison County area. Did you have to deal with some of these workforce issues, or did you hear a lot of that from some of the leaders that were coming through leadership at that time?
So I had the privilege of being CEO for Leadership Greater Huntsville. And during that, a lot of what leadership does is to be able to bring together those leaders from across our community to talk about challenges and problems. And so economic development and workforce is always a component of that program in terms of how it happens. Also looking at social services and understanding maybe some of our populations that don't necessarily know the opportunities or don't have access to the right resources in order to upskill and get the training they need. And so that was always part of the conversation that was happening. And one of the things that I think leadership is so great at doing is bringing people together to identify problems, but also not just to talk about them, but hopefully to also think about what are the solutions around it. And so oftentimes you would see whether those may become mentor programs that would happen in a certain area or engagement and collaboration with those education systems. A lot of times you would see projects and programs that came through the leadership classes that would focus in those areas, oftentimes helping to identify ways to ensure that whether it was students or it was individuals that, were otherwise not engaged, knew about and had access to the resources, or that the organizations that served them maybe had the funding to be able to do what they needed to do. So we're pretty lucky in Huntsville. We have a lot of great things to celebrate. And yet in order to keep having those great things to celebrate, we're also a community that I think openly talks about where we have challenges. And that's one of the things that I think both leadership as well as, just the convening work that the chamber does and other organizations, that's what makes our community pretty special and unique.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on there. And, in that role, it seems like you could really focus on the big picture. And, in your current role, you also kind of have a big picture look at things, but there's also these mega immediate needs. So, how do you balance the short term versus the long term in that?
Yes, I think that's it's one of the pieces that I enjoy, but it's also one of the things that can feel challenging because, my role doesn't necessarily go and solve the one problem for one company necessarily on a daily basis. So there can be times that we're doing work that you don't see an immediate impact because, again, when you're talking about either mindset shifts or training and skill set shifts, there are different levels of being able to turn that around quickly. And so sometimes maybe I just need to connect with the right organization to put a training program in place, or there's one that exists and I just plug a company up with them and all of a sudden we have a solution to a problem. Other times it's much bigger, like the things we're talking about now that are kind of systemically, we're seeing workforce and talent shortages. So that requires a lot more thoughtfulness and a lot more collaboration across the entire region to make those solutions come out and for us to see that. And the immediacy doesn't exist there. So there is kind of that balance of being able to do both pieces of it.
Is it sometimes hard to get competing companies to collaborate on these kind of issues? I mean, I've seen, whether it's here or Research Park or, they'll have now hiring signs and it's almost like they're right across the street from a competitor. Or, we had Bill Miller here on the program who runs these restaurants here at Redstone Gateway. And he was talking about how within the food industry, they do try to collaborate a little bit while they compete, but they sometimes will share workforce and things like that if the hours line up and things of that nature. So have you run into challenges with that in any industry?
I think that is one thing that I'm not sure I would enjoy my job as much in other communities because I do think that you see a lot of territorialism in certain places. That's one spot that I think Huntsville and our region does a good job. So you do have people in, whether it's leadership positions or, comparable roles across organizations that come together and talk about those challenges and problems. Sure, there's probably a point in time that it gets past the collaborative piece and gets more into maybe specific differentiation of, exactly what a company is doing, especially if they're recruiting for and trying to hire the exact same talent. But for the most part, you see people who are really open to having collaborative discussions because they recognize, if they're having difficulty filling a certain type of position, it is likely that other organizations are having similar difficulty filling that same type of position. And they're not just looking for one person. And so in order to attract that type of individual or that type of skill set, whether it's to a region or to a company, they still need to be talking about and thinking about the same things. And so I don't see as much of that territory coming into play. I see a lot more collaboration that's happening. Certainly, everybody wants to hire the best person for the job. And hopefully there are other things aside from just that job description that also help that individual make the decision about which company is best aligned to them too.
So do you get into discussion of benefits and things that companies could be doing to bring in talent? I mean, as kind of like an advisor role?
We do. So that's another piece. Sometimes I do serve in almost like a consulting type role of sharing information of what we see on, benefits in particular. That's an area that the chamber a long time ago recognized. You need benchmark information. Companies need to be able to share that. And so we do an annual wage and benefit survey that our members can participate in and then are able to also get those results and utilize them on, the government contracting side. They may use that for a contract, but on, the HR side, they're also using that just across the board to make sure that they're benchmarking and competitive when it comes to benefits that they offer and total compensation packages as well. And so being able to have those regional components is very helpful. And so that's something that we continue to provide. And then as we have feedback also from our members and from our companies, then if there's a certain area or a certain topic that seems to be a consistent challenge or a consistent question, then we're looking for ways to bring people together or to share information around those kinds of topics too. And so that really is kind of what the chamber is focused to do, is make sure that our business community has either access to or answers to questions or challenges that are presenting them so that they can do what they need to do on a day-to-day basis.
Well, I know there's all these industries and certain sectors that are maybe harder hit than others coming out of COVID. I know affordable housing is a nationwide question right now. I can say just in the day-to-day work that I do and the cool projects going on in like Cummings Research Park and stuff, it's all the construction industry is so hard right now on filling jobs and making sure they have adequate workforce and labor. There's some great programs like Drake State is taking an initiative. And then I know, on the retail side, on food and beverage, that's really hard hit right now. It's so super competitive, and that seems like a nationwide issue. And I know there's programs like Hatch and things trying to bring more workers to that level. Are any of these issues very specific to Huntsville? And if so, do we have a specific way to address them? Is that question kind of make sense?
Yeah, the question makes sense. I don't know that there are issues from an overall talent conversation that are completely unique to Huntsville. So we're not experiencing a challenge that doesn't exist in other comparable cities, or even cities that maybe we kind of benchmark ourselves against. And so that is something that we're also looking across the country, even in terms of dialogue and conversations that are happening, or talking to counterparts of mine in other chambers and economic development organizations, to be able to identify what are some things that other people are doing as well. When we think about Huntsville in particular, obviously we have certain industries that kind of tend to be our sweet spots from just a historical experience, but also as we grow into the future. So, certainly where we have challenges in, manufacturing hiring, that's a growing area and industry for the region. And so looking at what are the programs and who are the partners that are the right fit for those opportunities. Continuing to focus on our DoD and government contracting area, looking at our engineering and technical talent around that. Obviously, back to the training side, you can't turn around an engineer in a 9-week program.
Sure.
So what are the things that you can do, or where are the opportunities that an organization maybe can do things differently? What are the programs that allow organizations to look at existing workforce and being able to train and make sure that they have people that have the skill set that they need, that maybe makes them a little bit more multidisciplinary in terms of what they do, if that's an option. And in some cases, it's not. So then it is going back to, okay, well, what's the pipeline? And that's part of the reason that we focus all the way down to elementary and K-12 students, is to understand, what do jobs look like? What kinds of things do you just naturally like? Because ideally you go to work every day and you like what you do.
That's important.
And so how do we make sure that students have exposure to, if you're someone who likes to tinker, well, maybe you would like engineering. If you're somebody who, really likes to sit and is analytical and wants to go through those pieces, that's different. If you want to work with your hands, then here's some pathways compared to if you want to work on a computer, or you want to
service oriented, or
you want to work in a team environment. So trying to direct students and individuals to those appropriate pathways that align to some of their natural inclinations is an important component of that too. That's
big. You mentioned like peer cities that maybe we look to, or comparable cities. Like when Space Command, and I know it's still being looked at, and the DoD and the GAO and everything is reviewing the decision to come to Huntsville. But Space Command had mentioned in their announcement that how great the workforce is in Huntsville, Alabama. And we've heard that before from other companies that have made decisions to come here. So it seems like we're doing pretty well on the issue. And I know we're trying to address challenges before maybe they pop up. which is some of the things you mentioned you're already kind of looking at. But how do we compare to other cities? I mean, are we ahead of the curve a little bit?
Again, it's going to depend on what you're looking at, but I would say across the board and for the most part, the feedback that we get is that we are ahead of the curve. There's some national media and accolades that we receive unsolicited that I would say validate that. So it's not just we think we're great, but other people have said it too. And I do think part of the reason that we're ahead of the curve is because of the good collaboration that we have. And that exists not just from companies that are willing to have conversations with one another, but that's, at our elected official leadership level, that's at our, just community engagement level too. And I think Huntsville continues to be a unique place because you do have several people who come here for opportunities. And so as we continue to attract new jobs and new companies and new talent, we also see more people that continue to look at a place like this. I relocated here and wasn't originally from this area. Half of the people here are similar to me. They came here probably because of an opportunity that existed. And yet Huntsville's a place that embraces people who are new. And as a result, we also have folks that come that oftentimes maybe have different perspectives. They have this benefit of local, homegrown, and just deep roots within our community. And they welcome in the newcomers who come as well to be able to say, well, hey, I've been somewhere else that maybe we address this challenge. And so being forward thinking has benefited us historically and continues to benefit us as well. And that's one of the reasons that a position like mine exists at the chamber, is so that it is a conversation that we're consistently having and that there's someone waking up thinking about on a daily basis. And so those are some of the things that I think we've done well just as a community and continue to do really well.
Yeah. So this kind of puts you on the spot. Is there a specific initiative or a specific light bulb moment that you can think of where you were able to maybe in a collaboration meeting or something solve a workforce issue or help somebody out in a really cool way or anything like that? Or is there a program that you guys came up with that you think has been successful?
I think the first part is there are a lot of times that I get to end the day and think, oh, I was so glad to be able to make that connection and to point those people to the right thing. And I think one of the benefits is sometimes I see those outcomes and other times I don't see those outcomes, but I know that those relationships happen and that those conversations happen. One of the programs that we actually started at the chamber when I was there previously and continue to do that I think, at least for me, is meaningful and I think addresses a couple of the things that we try to do is a program called Industry Insights, which is where we take our educators actually into our local companies and businesses. And so it's important for them to have that experience and to have that exposure because they're really great at being great teachers. That's what we want them to do. And that's why we have them in the jobs that they're in. But they're not necessarily aware of what the vast opportunities look like. And so, you can take me into a place like Hudson Alpha and I'm in awe, but I have no idea what they really do until somebody really walks me through what's happening there and why those labs are so critical or how they innovate and what those things are that are happening. Same thing if you take them into a manufacturing environment. So they maybe have a misconception that it's dirty and it's a terrible work environment, and then you walk them through and it's cleaner probably than a lot of the schools they may work in, right?
Sure.
So being able to engage people and give them exposure to things that they otherwise may not have, that talent pipeline side of the work that we do is probably one of the pieces that I love the most, just because I think about even my own kids. How do I make sure that they get exposed to things that maybe I don't know that much about, but might align to things they have an interest in the future? And so the challenge of something like that is we're not going to turn around and say, well, we did this program and as a result, we're able to fill these 500 jobs that we have. But we do start to see even slow shifts in that. So just a in 2019, there was a study that a lot of regional partners participated in that Deloitte came in and did. And that study, we had done some similar workforce studies a few years prior, but it had probably been about 5 years. And even at that point, they were able to see some of those shifts in terms of where we saw students and how they matriculate into post-secondary experiences. And so it's slow sometimes to see it happen. But it's pretty rewarding when you even see a teacher that has this aha moment of, oh my goodness, I've been talking to this student and this would be perfect for them.
Sure. You kind of already hit on a little bit, but quality of life. And I saw the recent budget that the mayor presented to the city council in Huntsville, and Huntsville's really taking it head on to create a great quality of life in Huntsville, great bang for your buck. How important is the quality of life in recruiting and retaining a workforce, and what are some of the things you think Huntsville's done right in those regards in recent memory?
Yeah. I think quality of life is a really important component, and it's something that we heard a lot of in the talent conversation in recent years. And I would say there's even a brighter spotlight on it after the last year and a half and throughout the pandemic, and people thinking about work differently and even having to work differently. And so quality of life is just an ongoing conversation. One of the biggest components of that for people is their time. And so keeping our commute time at a place that is, to some people, shocking, but that remains competitive. That 20-minute average commute time is really critical. And so the projects that the city has done and continues to do, and that the region has done, focused on infrastructure, while maybe you don't always think, oh, well, infrastructure also equates to workforce. But in reality, it does. I'm originally from the DC area, and I regularly love that I do not sit in that kind of traffic here. And I think those are some of the pieces that do attract people here. And then outside of that, because they maybe have a shorter commute time, then they can take advantage of the other things that they want to spend their time doing.
It's their time, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so then all of the other pieces, the arts and the entertainment and the outdoor recreation
Trader Joe's.
The Trader Joe's, the sports, just all of those things are equally as important, because not only are they in a place that they have not a terrible commute, but they're also in a place that has all the amenities that they want, and they can enjoy them more freely as well.
Yeah, I know. I've taken in a Mars Music Hall show, and I'm really excited about the amphitheater that's going to be coming in, and just down the street from here where we are right now, and just the fact we won't necessarily have to go to Birmingham or Nashville to take in a really cool concert. That's been one thing I think has been big, but just little things. I think for me, I think it's important. You may run into this and see it a lot, is getting, especially younger people that may come to Huntsville that aren't from Huntsville, that maybe take their first job in Huntsville, is getting them to stay in Huntsville. So there have been any particular programs oriented around that?
Yeah, that's an area that's been a conversation for a while, and it's actually a place that is fun to get to see some of the different conversations even that I'm having now than what I had at the chamber even, in 2017. And so we do a program in the summer that's targeted at local, companies that have interns and co-ops, just to kind of let them also get together. It's casual, but it's also to say, hey, let us show you some of the organizations and the people, and let you also just connect with other folks who are here, especially for those that are maybe here for the summer and aren't from here, because they're the best word of mouth marketing that we have. If they go back to school and are sharing, well, Huntsville was awesome because of fill in the blank, that's a great recruitment tool for us in reality. And we want them to see what those things are. And depending upon what they're doing on a day-to-day basis, they may not get that exposure. So we're looking to continue to do programs like that, where we can engage them in the local community. And then we also are, from a recruitment side, we actually go to our college campuses, to some targeted schools, and call it a smart place on the road. And so we will take companies down for internship, co-op, and full-time recruitment purposes, and show up as a region and a community instead of just a standalone company at a job fair. And so as I've been talking to those career services offices, now they're often reaching out to me before I reach out to them and saying, hey, our students want to be in Huntsville. This is a place that they're interested in coming to.
Wow.
And that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
So kind of back to sometimes things take a little while to get to that point. Probably 5 years ago, I was pounding the pavement to them, and now we tend to have more outreach coming to us. We're still equally as excited to engage with them, but it's a slightly different dialogue, and that nuance change makes a big difference. And even at the state level, they're looking at a program called Retain Alabama, where we want our college graduates that go to Alabama schools to look at opportunities here. And so, again, that kind of shows the difference between we'll focus, on local efforts, but we'll also be part of that statewide conversation as well.
Yeah, I think you raise a good point. I think I saw a number that maybe 40% of students at like the University of Alabama are actually from out of state, which is, insane if you think about if we can keep all these people and, hopefully in most cases they're just going to enter the workforce in Alabama and then, continue that pipeline that you guys are working on would be fantastic. So kind of a fun question since we're sitting in a restaurant. What do you think is probably your favorite food dish in the city of Huntsville?
Oh,
That's putting you on the spot.
That is putting me on the spot.
Or dessert.
My absolute favorite.
See, I'm like a blue plate breakfast guy.
Okay. I
know that's an easy one.
Yeah. I love a good bowl of pho.
Okay.
And so the fact that we have like several Vietnamese restaurants now that can deliver on that, I really appreciate that.
That's pretty recent too.
Yeah.
It wasn't always there. So
exactly.
That's awesome. Viet Hong then?
Yeah, I love Viet Hong. Viet cuisine I love as well. So there's a couple of good
There's
spots.
There's a new one on Airport that's pretty phenomenal too.
Okay,
So
I haven't been there yet.
Viet House.
Nice.
So we're talking about quality of life, and you have a family, and what are some of the things you guys enjoy doing in the community that people may not know of?
Oh my goodness. I don't know that people may not know of, but sure. I have 3 young kids. And so we're pretty active on just the personal side of things. So we certainly welcome and enjoy the outdoor spaces that we have, whether that is, outdoor at Big Spring Park or Montesano, or if that's outdoor just in the, big green space over at Campus 805, because it means that I can sit and have a slice of pizza and a drink, and my kids can run around on a field and burn some energy too. So I think just those things that have created some mixed use opportunity are things that we continue to enjoy. I love the new restaurants that are coming to Huntsville and seeing that continue to grow. A joke that we tend to eat our way through any community. And so that is something that's been fun to just see new things continue to pop up as well and be able to enjoy some of those pieces.
So is there anything else you'd want the listeners to know just about your role or about how they can interact with the chamber, anything like that?
I think the biggest thing from my side is just the conversation and the engagement and the collaboration is critical. And so, a company can maybe solve their smaller workforce challenge alone, but they can probably solve it better if we're having a broader conversation about it and we're bringing others to the table that are maybe having similar challenges as well. And that truly is one of the reasons that I love doing this work in Huntsville, is because we collaborate so well as a community. And so I would just say, look for the conversation, look for an opportunity to be part of it. I certainly know all of our businesses are busy. Everyone is busy. Sure. And sometimes it feels like there's not time to sit down and engage in some of those pieces. But I think that's one of the most critical things that we can do in order to then identify and address the problems and the challenges if they present themselves. And also maybe to continue to be ahead of the curve as well. So just that ongoing opportunity for collaboration and on occasion picking your head up from inside of the day-to-day of what everybody is, heads down and focused on, to be part of that dialogue is really important, and something that I hope they'll look for an opportunity to do, and that I would welcome, and certainly the chamber and really the broader community welcomes.
Good. Well, that's great stuff. Thanks for all you do in the community, and thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Uncommon Access. Our podcast is produced by Redstone Gateway, where the future works. You can find Uncommon Access on major podcast platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, as well as on YouTube. You can find out more about Uncommon Access on redstonegateway.com/podcast. Special thanks to our recording location, the Rocket City Tavern. We'll see you soon for another chat of the future. Uncommon Access is recorded on location at Rocket City Tavern. The tavern is conveniently located outside Gate 9 at Redstone Gateway and serves up delicious food with an unbeatable atmosphere. Rocket City Tavern is where history and people meet for great food and drinks.